Hello, and welcome to the Handplane Challenge. I'm Mark, your host, and I'm the guy who does research on vintage handplanes so that you don't have to, unless you want to. Today, in the next video for the Handplane Challenge video series, we've got a little twist. Normally in this video series, we compare one vintage handplane to another vintage handplane to see which ones are better and which ones have more defects and so on and so forth. Today, it's not going to be exactly the same. Today, we're going to compare the regular frog angle version of a vintage handplane with the high angle frog of a vintage handplane. So you ask, well, Mark, they didn't make high angle frogs for those vintage handplanes. But there's a new item on the market from Reed Planes, sold by Wood by Right. You can buy little wedges. These are the bags they come in, and these wedges are said to fit under the frog and raise it to either a 50 or a 55 degree angle. And so I'm going to test them out. So job number one is, what plane do I want to install these on? I should say that I bought 150 and 155 kit, so I have two kits to install. So what plane do I want to install these on? Well, that turned out to be a little easier question than I thought. When I surveyed the inventory, I actually realized, and people who are watching my video series probably already know this, I realized that I actually don't have that many planes that these would go on, because in order to install one of these things, you need a Bailey style frog on a 2-inch wide blade, like a Stanley No. 4 or a Stanley No. 5. Can't be on a No. 7, can't be on a 5.5, can't be on a 3. Got to be on something with a 2-inch wide blade. So not only do I have not that many Bailey frogs, the number that are 2-inch wide blades is even smaller. So in fact, I only had two planes that qualified, as it turned out. So the choice was easy. I'm going to put the 50 degree frog kit into this Stanley No. 4 Type 11. This has been featured in an earlier video, a couple of earlier videos, so you should be well familiar with it, or you can go back and review those videos for more information. The 55 degree kit is going to go in this Miller's Falls No. 9. This is a plane that, well, let me just back up a little bit. How did I decide which would be getting which kit? Well, the Stanley has been one of my favorites for many years. And it cuts like a dream. You can see it in the earlier videos. I really like this plane. So for me, it was important to be able to switch back and forth pretty easily. I can put a kit in or convert it back to the standard 45 degree angle frog. So this one is going to get the 50 degree frog kit, because that one, as we'll see in just a bit, seems to be fairly much easier to put in and take out. The 55-degree kit is going to go into this Miller's Falls number 9. This number 9, this was a flea market find. Paid 10 bucks for it. It looked like crap, but it was one of those flea market finds that, and you guys out there know what I'm talking about. It cleaned up great, and it was a magnificent, ended up being a magnificent bargain. However, I also like my Stanley number 4 a lot, and I've had it longer. So this plane has been having a bit of difficulty finding its way into the daily rotation. Now it turns out that the 55-degree frog is a bit more difficult to take in and take out. So I'm thinking that I probably won't want to do it very much, and so I think I can take this plane and sort of make it a permanent high-angle frog plane, sort of dedicated to that task. As a sort of secondary benefit, this does have the 2-piece lever cap, which helps, as we saw in the earlier video. This was all in the earlier video on this plane. We saw that the 2-piece lever cap pressed the cutter against the frog. Maybe that'll help a little bit in those high-angle situations. There will probably be more stress on the whole system. So maybe that 2-piece frog will help in this case. So at any rate, permanent conversion to 55 degrees, 50-degree frog as needed. All right then, so let's install these kits and see how it goes. Okay, here's the Stanley Bailey number 4 and the kit that comes from Reed Plane by way of Wood by Wright. And by the way, you can I'll put a link to James Wright's website where you can buy these things. I understand that they're out of stock right at the moment, but will be back in stock pretty soon. So that's the latest information I have. All right, let's take this out of the bag. For the 50-degree kit, here we have the wedge. This basically just fits under the frog. We're going to do that in just a minute. It's got a little line on here with the 50 degrees. That's where you're supposed to line it up to make sure that you get 50 degrees. Like I say, we'll see all this in just a moment. Also included are extra screws, because what we're going to find is the screws that normally hold the frog down are going to be too short for this kit, and so he's provided longer ones to make to mount the whole assembly. Okay, now I'm going to try to do most of this in real time. If it gets too long, I'll just have to go off camera for a bit, but bear with me. I'm going to take it apart. Now I'm not going to say anything about the Stanley Bailey number 4 Type 11 plane. Covered that in the earlier video. Not really germane to the discussion. All right, so we're going to take the frog off. Okay, now I already know, because I've obviously done this once already, we are not going to be able to use the old screws, so we're going to set them aside. We're going to have to remove the frog adjuster here. Now to do that, because the screw is pretty much behind the depth adjustment knob, I could try to get something in there underneath it, but I prefer to just take the whole depth adjuster knob off make it easy to get a screwdriver on this thing. Okay, taking that off. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to take all the spare parts and put them back in the bag that the 50-degree frog kit comes that comes with the kit, so that they don't get lost. Now this one I'm going to screw back in because it's kind of out of the way. Best way to not lose a screw is to put it back where it came. I'm going to put the depth adjuster knob back on. Spinning her down. Okay. Now, I also know from my earlier attempt, it wasn't really clear to me whether this screw interfered with the wedge. So I don't think so, but out of an abundance of caution, I don't want it binding, you know, maybe having distortions in there somewhere. So I'm going to take this one out too. Okay. All right, now we're ready to go. So the 50-degree frog fits in here like this. The lines line up. Now, one thing I found already is that it's pretty easy for the thing to flop back like that. So, and another thing I've discovered is that once you've got the frog in place, you can't see if this line is lining up or not. This 50 degrees line right here. So what I did was put it in position, lined up with the front of that machine surface, and then I made a couple of light little marks here on the cheek. You know, this is a user, not a collector, as you can see. Almost on a daily basis, so a couple little scratch marks in the cheek aren't going to kill anybody. All right, now I'm going to take these screws out, install them. Whoops. It would help if we had the frog in there. How's that for a innovation? Now, pardon my fumble fingers here. I'm not as young as I used to be. All right, that wasn't too bad. Okay, going to spin them down a little bit. And you'll see, you're asking right now, well, what about the wedge? Well, I found it easier to, you know, the slots here are open at the front, so I just go ahead and insert the wedge at this point. Now there's a tricky acrobatics here. I'm trying to line up the wedge with the little scratch marks, about like that, and I'm trying to keep the frog, you know, we no longer have our frog adjustment screw, so we've got to keep that guy in where we want it, more or less, and keep the wedge in place. About like that. And tighten the screws. And now I'm going to get them a little closer because I should have done that first. Okay, so we're looking at the scratch mark. That's not too bad, I think. We're We need to go a little forward on our frog so that the cutter is right at the back end of the mouth. Okay. That doesn't look too bad. We're a little bit back on the, need to push a little forward on the, another thing that I've found as a sort of helpful hint is, you know, that frog is not registering anywhere in a 90 degrees to the sole. So I think it's helpful to take your square and make sure that the wedge is more or less in there straight. Like I'm pretty easy, just square on the side of the cheek and line up the wedge. It's not too bad. We're close to the front of the back of the mouth there. I think we're ready to tighten it down. Doesn't need to be superhuman tight. Nice snug fit. Now, we put the cutter back in. Assembly. Because we've changed geometry quite a bit, the cutter is now way out of the bottom of the sole. So we're going to back it up. And we're basically done. Okay, we have installed the wedge for the 50-degree reed plane high angle frog kit in a Stanley number 4 type 11. All right, now let's try the 55-degree kit. Okay, here's the Miller's Falls number 9. This plane has also been featured in an earlier video, so I'm not going to talk about it in great detail here. Feel free to go back and review that video if you so desire. Right in front of it is the kit that for the 55-degree high angle frog. Packaged pretty much similar to the 50-degree high angle frog kit. Little bag, wedge, and screws. So let's get started. We start taking it apart. We'll take out the frog. Oops. It's Texas. Bugs are everywhere. Alright, unscrewing these guys. Again, these guys aren't going to get reused, these frog screws. They don't fit into the new scheme. Alright, so just like the other one, I'm going to take the frog adjustment bracket out. Put the screw back in. Put the depth adjustment knob back on. spin her down. And likewise, going to take this part out as well. Not sure that's 100% necessary, but want to make sure that nothing gets screwed up. All right, we got it apart. Now we're going to open up the package. This kit, this wedge is quite a bit different than the other one. Now you can see we've got two slots to hold down the wedge, but because the wedge is bigger to make for the high angle frog, we've got two additional screws to mount the frog in on top of the wedge. So that'll be a little more clear as we progress here. Now, one thing about that is we don't have near as much issue with the wedge moving around, so because it's going to get securely tightened down. Now, I was a little unsure which washers went with which screws when I first did this, but what I fairly quickly discovered was that the there's a small washer and a larger washer. What I found was the larger washer, if you put the larger washer under the wedge screws, it pushes the wedge, you know, there's not enough clearance here at the front of the slot. It pushes the wedge too far forward and you don't have enough room to get the blade in the mouth. So we could do that on camera, but hopefully you can just take my word for it. So now James in his video said in some cases people might have to leave the washers out altogether. I found that it was okay to leave them in. We'll see in just a minute. We'll make sure, we'll prove that in just a minute. So wedge screws going in. Now, pretty easy to adjust this guy because we're going to want to press it all the way back. There's a slot there, but I don't think I'll be able to use it much. So the wedge screw is going to be positioned all the way forward in the slot. Now, we're going to put in the frog screws. Interestingly, I was like, whoa, Phillips head screws. I was like befuddled there for a minute. A Phillips head screw on a hand plane. Holy cow, who'd have thunk it? I got over it. All right, so now we're going to put these guys in. And again, it's going to be the same sort of story here. Pretty much in order to get this Miller's Falls to work, I had to push everything to the rear as much as possible. Pushing it like with this setup. Yeah, the frog is pretty much right at the back of the mouth where it should be, so that's pretty good. Now, the first sort of wrinkle came at this point. Here's the cutter with the original cap iron. Put it in. Under no circumstances, when I put it all the way up, cutter all the way up, it was still sticking out the bottom of the plane. So there's a problem, because there's no other way to, well, it's just no way to get it further back. I got everything as far back as I could make it. So then I puzzled over what to do for a little bit. And here's a case where being a pack rat comes in handy, because somewhere along the line, and I don't even remember where, somewhere along the line I picked up this cap iron, which, as you can see, if I line up the slots here in the same place, is just a fraction shorter than the original cap iron. So that was a stroke of luck. So put the original over there, put this guy in, lining them up pretty nice. As you probably remember, none of this had to really be changed on the Stanley with the 50-degree frog. Okay, that's in now. And now, lo and behold, the cutter is not sticking out the bottom. And we are all the way up on the depth adjustment knob. So now we can turn it out, and yep, sticking out now. All right. Now another thing that's a little different, didn't have to do much with Stanley, but here we've got to tighten up there a little bit on that guy. Maybe just a hair more. Yeah. All right. We are done. We have installed the 55-degree high-angle frog kit into a Miller's Falls number 9. What I would say here is, I got lucky. I had an alternative cap iron. I'm not exactly sure what you should do if you don't have a replacement cap iron. That would probably be a good thing to bounce off James or Jeff of Reed Plane to get their recommendations. I'm not sure what one would do. But at any rate, I've got it done. I've got now both planes mounted with high-angle frog kits. And what we're going to do is see how well they work. We're going to try to get some highly figured wood, do some planing, see if we get how much tear out we get, both in standard angle configuration and high angle configuration. And we'll see for the first time in this shop at least how the benefits of a high angle frog. However, that is going to be in part 2 of this video, just so that we can not go too long. All right then, there you have it. Stay tuned for part 2, and we'll see you next time on the Handplane Challenge.